Okay, but what if we don't want to go into artificial intelligence for now and would like to just get a a strong footing inside of the industry? So we will focus on this very subject in this part, and the way I think about it, and this is all based on my experience. This is something that I've actually utilized. This is something that I've used throughout my career. This is how I would approach making 3D characters. So the way I see it is that the industry, and we're talking about video game industry, we're talking about film industry, works in a very specific way. As long as it's an industry, as long as there are many people involved, there should be some kind of a structure, right? And the way I see this kind of system is that there are elements that work, right? There is something about the work that we do that needs to be fitting within this system. And so it's a very analytical approach to this subject, right? We're talking about anatomy, we're talking about work, a creative work, even that complicates things even more, at least at the first glance. But I still do think that this is a way to look at things just as valuable as perhaps any other. So these are some references that I've gathered, and they are quite recent in terms of the not the work itself, but the IPs that they were IPs that they participate in. So we have creators, God of War. We have a character from Diablo 4, right? That's the latest one. This is from Raid. I do not know the names of the artists. I mean, this is probably Rafael Grassetti. He was the lead artist there. But I don't know the names of the artists who made those, and it's not that's beyond the point. I don't want to butcher anybody's work, right? This is not what I'm trying to do here. All of those works are really, 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 really well done. That's the reason why I've gathered them here in the first place. But what I wanted to pay attention to is the repetition of certain things that occur on every single character of them. I've made specifically this kind of a collage using the same kind of similar body types, right? But this works on pretty much every other body type there is. Slim, fat, big, small, female, male, doesn't matter, right? There is something that is common to all of those characters. And so we can dissect this, right? We can literally take a look at what is taking place, and based on that we can figure out what is really important when it comes to executing a character that will, I shouldn't say it will stand out, because if we strip them from everything that we see here, right, if we strip them from all the accessories, they will be more or less the same, right? I mean, they are proportionally more or less the same. So it's not going to be it's not about kind of making them stick out. It's about making them to the highest quality that any respectful company will demand of its employees, right, of its artists. And so quickly, let's just go one by one, and I will kind of just briefly mention a few things, and then we can point them out using some pencils. But pay attention to the shoulders, pay attention to this area, pay attention to the elbow, all of those elements in here, and just notice that there is a pattern taking place with it. I mean, it's I might be saying something really, really shallow in some sense, really obvious, right? It's like, okay, yeah, it's a body. I mean, why wouldn't it look the same? It's a physical body. Everybody's have more or less the same body structure, right? So why wouldn't they differ? It's true, but it's just that this in fact is not really about anatomy. I mean, yes, it is about anatomy, but it's not about the way that we might think about anatomy. It's not about understanding where the bicep connects, right? If even without understanding that, you will be able to produce this kind of a result, because it's about observation. It's not about anatomy in the sense that studying anatomy like a bookworm, right? Understanding the names, understanding the bones, the rotation, and all of those things. Because this is the industry, and I keep repeating this. This is the whole point of the lecture, is that this is not a sculpture. If somebody is getting offended by me saying that, well, sorry, but this is not a sculpture. This is a product of an industry, right? And because it's a product of an industry, because it's a standardized product of an industry, there shouldn't be any complications. There shouldn't be any thoughts that what we should be creating is beyond this, right? This is kind of the pinnacle of what kind of anatomy is required by a 3D artist, right? This kind of stuff. So everything is here. And again, we can just now highlight some of the things. So those elements, right? Those elements, this kind of stuff, this, it really, if we look at every single model in here, they are more or less the same. The shapes are kind of the same. I mean, if you analyze it yourself, you will be able to tell that they differ, obviously, but they're kind of more or less the same, right? And it's, yes, if you look at the anatomy book, right, you will see the deltoid going this way, right? So this is the if we're looking from the side view, right? So this would be the bicep, this would be the elbow, this would be the arm, right? So this is kind of the structure of the deltoid, right? So obviously it's going to be looking similar here and here, but it's about the shape, really. At the end of the day, what we're making is a form, it's a shape. It's not us taking the skin off of a character, building a structure for the muscle, and then covering that with the skin. It's creating shapes, and the whole character consists of those kind of shapes, right? And they all repeat themselves. All of those things, they all repeat themselves. If you analyze, as I mentioned, you will be able to spot all of those things looking the same. I actually don't really understand what this is. It's either a texture, or there is some really strange situation going on here. But it's kind of, the same thing. I mean, even here, if you do spend some time yourself on observing the models that are out there, you'll be able to spot those things, right? Even this muscle, the end of the muscle, I suppose, it's everywhere. I mean, it's really, if we look at some other references, it really is everywhere. And yes, it's a nice thing to understand what it is, right? Where it connects and what it does and all of that. But at the end of the day, this will not, and this is based really only on my experience, but like I said, I've worked in some of the biggest companies out there, so I'm confident that that there is something about this kind of my experience that holds value, right? That at the end of the day, you don't need to know what this really is to be able to create something like this, right? What you need is the skill to be able to execute this when you observe the form, when you observe the character, when you observe the reference, not the character, but the reference. As long as you do that, you will be just fine making any of those characters, right? You'll be fine doing any of this stuff. And it's interesting, but I wanted to to show you something. I think it's kind of funny. Let me just put it right here, maybe somewhere here. No, that's a little bit too much. I don't want it to crown my work to be standing at the top. If you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description. So this is something that I've done, and I did this. I'm not even sure, 12 years ago, maybe more. This is one of the kind of my earliest works, I would say. Personal ones, because I would spend a lot of time making those kind of things, right? But this was 12 years ago. Let's say 12 years ago. If I take this model, and I do have some reference, not reference, but kind of work in progress. If I analyze this myself now, and if I compare that to everything that we see in here, it's going to be more or less the same. The thing is, though, I've done this, I've made this model before I knew anything about anatomy, before I had taken any class in the anatomy, before I read any anatomy books, right? This is all based on observation. And I mean, all of those things in here, for example, the shapes, right? They can be seen in here. And this work is from, well, this year, right? So this is 12 years apart, right? Me not knowing anatomy, the person, I don't know, maybe not knowing anatomy, right? And doing the same thing, I don't know. But what I'm trying to get at is that you can still produce characters that are believable, right? That they are good looking. Well, I'm talking about my work. Hopefully it is good looking, but I'm trying to say that it's more about your ability to observe the shape than it is the ability to remember and know what muscle connects to where. Because as I keep mentioning, this is not going to be a sculpture. This is not going to, you're not making this character with the arms, going those kind of directions, right? Everything here is static, and because it's static, it simplifies things a lot, right? You just need to pay attention to the way the form is, how it connects, and it's executed really, 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 really well. And maybe to illustrate it even further, I have a whole series of making of this model, right? It's called Making of Gladiator, and there are 25 parts. I didn't do any narration. It was my first kind of video. It's not even tutorial. I just wanted to record something and post it on YouTube, right? But you can see it from the very beginning. I mean, literally, the process begins with me creating some Z-spheres, right? And what you see behind is a image, the main reference, as well as some references here down, right? There are some bodybuilders, but the main reference that I was using was of Fedor Emelianenko, so that's a UFC fighter. And this is how I would work, right? I didn't even have a second screen to have it, put on the table so I can look at the reference. Literally, the workflow was this. Exactly what you see on the screen. I have a bunch of photographs from different angles, right? I have from the side view, I have from the back, I have from the front, and this is how I would make the whole character, right? Step by step, going by one. So this is the main reference, right? This is something I should probably mention. As long as you understand what needs to be done, right? As long as you understand what kind of a body type you're going for, you just need to find the right reference, right? Even if you know your anatomy, even if you're really an expert in anatomy, it wouldn't pay much if you don't have the right reference, because all of those muscles, for example, in his case, right, he is a UFC fighter. I mean, he used to be a UFC fighter, so he is an incredibly strong person, yet look how much soft tissue there is on the body, right? You would imagine that he would be completely like lean, right, completely kind of blocked out in terms of his muscle relief, but he's not, right? And this kind of surface you will not get in anatomy books. You will get it only by observing real bodies, right? Gathering reference and paying attention to small details, to small things, the way they lie on the surface. So that was the whole process, right? So looking at the back, looking at the front, looking at the side, and just step by step doing this And then, when the block out is done of the body, I would gather maybe more references for the fat tissue, for the fatty tissue, and if there is some element that is holding, and in my example, if there is an element like this, right, kind of holding a belt, let's say it's a belt, I would just think, how would that affect the fatty tissue, right? Maybe too much, right? But in my defense, 12 years ago, but it just kind of those small things, right? And then you just kind of visualize it in your head. It's not about understanding so much, as it is about visualizing and kind of trying to make sense what will happen if the tissue is this way, right? If it's a soft surface, what will happen? And so, to summarize, because we're not making this, because we in the industry, we're not sculptors. I'm sorry, we're not. We're 3D character artists, and let's just be very, very clear about it. Because we're not making this, right? We don't need to understand the complexity that goes inside of, for example, this part, right, where all the muscles in here connect. Where they go, do they connect to the bone somewhere in here? Do they connect to bone somewhere here? The complexity is not required from us. Do we need to understand just how much the angle of the clavicle is, right, when the shoulder is being lifted? We don't. If we are working as 3D character artists, we don't need to know any of this. We don't need to know all of this complexity that is taking place, right? The back will probably be the biggest illustration. From this all the way to this, right? There's a lot of taking place, a lot of going on underneath the surface. This is where anatomy comes in, right? This is exactly why we need to understand anatomy. But we don't need to understand anatomy to make something like this, right? Something perhaps like this, something that we do see in the industry, something that is, not only do we see it in the industry, something that is required. This is your work. Literally, this is your job to do this. Your job is not to do this. So it's, in my opinion, it's much simpler. I'm not saying it's easier, but I'm saying that it's much simpler to to be able to produce something really good looking, right? When it comes to 3D character artists, it's not about anatomy. It's about observation. It's about reference. It's about your skill as in this case, not a sculptor, but an artist who uses digital medium that has a sculpting part to it, right? It's not just modeling, but there is some sculpting to do, but it's about your ability to recreate the surface. It's not your ability to understand the surface inside out. It's about your ability to recreate it.